Good evening. Job chapter 35. Job chapter 35, we're going to be talking about bartering with God tonight. And first of all, I just wanted to thank you for, again, praying for us as we went to Michigan. You know, it's a blessing to go back and reunite with friends that you're socially distanced in a major way. But it's amazing how God works in just creating families all over the world, and how you can connect with one Christian friend and bond like you had never left. And we appreciated that. We had a good funeral, a really good funeral. I know that sounds weird, but there was probably 120 people there. And it was just a blessing to be able to preach about the peace of God. She had a quote in her Bible. Donna had a quote. It said, "Let your life preach your funeral." And it made it so much easier to preach her funeral. All I had to do was testify of all that God had done in her life and what she meant to us. She's a wonderful woman. She threatened my life quite a few times, but I always knew that she cared. You know, sometimes when people threaten your life, but you could see in their eyes that they really do love you. I've gotten a lot of that from my wife. I'm just kidding. Maybe not. Donna had a cane that she would carry along with her. She, in Michigan, there's snow a lot, and a lot of ice. And, you know, that's why they have a hell Michigan. It's just bad stuff. I'm just kidding. They actually do have a hell Michigan. I don't know if have you been there? Yeah, just to say that you've been. She had a spike at the end of her cane, and she'd often pull that up and she'd point it at me. She'd say, "Strike one." And there was a joke behind that. When you get to strike three, that means you're dead. And she often said that to me, but she came up to me one time. I had canvas dress shoes, and I was often doing things that I shouldn't in my dress shoes to where I'd get them ruined, and I had a rip in the side. And she caught, supposedly, my toe sticking out, even though I wore socks, so it wasn't my bare toe. It was just, I guess my foot was protruding through the shoe. She comes up to me and she says, "I don't want to see your toes anymore. Here, go get some new shoes." And she gave me a green handshake. And that was just, she was just always so caring. She didn't just tell you something, she did something about it. If she wanted something done, she would be there. She cared. And so thank you so much for praying for us. I love how God works and creates a community together. Still praying for Dayton. Some of you has asked how they're doing, and just pray. You know, when you lose, when a pastor leaves, it's kind of like a divorce. There's a lot of healing that needs to happen, a lot of trust that needs to be worked through. And if they're watching this right now, that's okay that they're watching, because they need that. So just keep praying. They need to know that other people are praying for them through that process. And pray that they start, really grasping onto their pastor, especially during this time. It's hard trying to grasp onto a new church when COVID smacks you. And so that's a lot that they're working through. So thank you for your prayers. It was a good time. Great fellowship, and it was even nice to see my in-laws. So it was a good time. Job chapter 35 It's only 16 verses, so we should be very quick. Why are you laughing? I want to start off with this. And maybe my wife needs to shut her ears for a moment. But I just want to say that sometimes I am really full of myself. Have you ever been in that position? Where at times you do certain things and you think that you deserve certain things in return. Have you ever been like that in your marriage? Maybe you got your wife flowers, so you thought you deserved something in return, right? Just a smile at least, right? Maybe wives, you did something for your husbands and you just wanted him to sit and listen to you for 5 minutes at least without reading his phone at the same time. We think that we deserve certain things because of things that we do. We think that because we're a good citizen, that maybe politicians in return would do the things that we want them to do. We think because we're a great student, young people, that your teacher should treat you as a favorite and maybe let you get away with a few things. Sometimes we think because we feel that we're a good enough Christian that God should do what we want him to do. He should act the way that we want him to act. He should give us and bless us the way that we think that he should give and bless. But is that how God works? I titled this Bartering with God. Can we really barter with God? The answer is no. And as you get into this, Elihu spake, moreover, in verse number 1 of 35. He spake, moreover, and said this. He said, thinkest thou this to be right, that thou saidst, my righteousness is more than God's? You say, I'm not sure if Job ever stated that. I'm not sure if that ever came out of Job's mouth. But it says there, you think that this is right? Do you think that you're justified? Do you think that this is a righteous way of thinking, that your righteousness is better, more than God's? And you say, I don't know if that is a direct quote from Job. But if you back up for a moment and think of all the things that he stated, it seemed like he was going in that direction. So what do you mean? What do you mean? He said all kinds of things about God and how his ways are higher than our ways, and how he's an amazing God, and he blesses both those that are good and those that are bad, and he said a lot of things that were good about God, and it's not like Elihu doesn't see that. But when Elihu is coming to him, he's pointing out to the things that maybe Job just needs to really open his eyes up to. The fact that maybe he isn't getting it all correct. But in that point, you see here in verse 3, it goes on, for thou saidst, what advantage will it be unto thee? And what profit shall I have if I be cleansed from my sin? He says, I will answer thee and thy companions with thee. So he says, here's the question that you've posed with all of your speeches, with all of your conversations back and forth. This is what you propose. And I'll even introduce this to the friends as well, the other three that are supposed friends that are sitting here and listening, and they didn't never have a solution. So I'm going to try to answer you. But he goes on here, and in point number 1, it says there, what's the point? That's where Job has gotten to the point of is what's the point of righteous living if this is the way it's going to go? Have you ever asked that question? What's the point of going and gathering with the local church if this person doesn't like me? Or if this person doesn't recognize me? Or if I don't get accepted here? Or there's just an argument that's going on here? Have you ever asked that question? You don't have to confess your sin in front of everybody, but just think reflectively within yourself. What's the point? Have you ever worked so hard on your assignments that you give it all? You just give it all. And then the test comes around and you fail it. And you say, what is the point? My wife has test anxiety. Anybody else in here have test anxiety? Okay? My wife would know everything about the test. We would study together. Everything. She would know it inside and out. I would test her over and over and over again. She'd walk in there and fail it. And then I'd come out with an A. He said, how does that work? Well, she'd get in there and there'd be some anxiety of, I don't know if I know everything. I don't know what would happen. But in that moment, something clicked, and some of you have had that happen to you. It's like, and you get to the point, it's like, what is the point of even trying? I gave it all this time and effort, and yet nothing. When I was in Flint, when we were in Flint, I was working at a plastics factory, and you've heard me describe the conditions there, and maybe some of you have had worse conditions in your workplace, but it was a very difficult job. It was very dusty, dirty. They would take these big old plastic containers and they'd sit them out in the yard and leave them out there for weeks, and so then they'd get snow and mud and dust and rain and whatever else, and it would just sit in the sun, sit out there, whatever birds came by and nested in it, whatever. And then they bring it in, and then it would dump on top of you. And it was just nasty to be around. I mean, it was gross. I'd come home, and I was a totally different color of skin when I came home, to where my wife wondered if she was going to open up the door to me. She didn't recognize me at some points. I mean, it was just a rough job. I was a temp worker, okay? And some of the guys didn't like me there much. I don't know why. I mean, but anyway, there was a guy that tried to dump a container on top of me. It's pretty hefty, and he just didn't like me, so he tried to dump it. I caught it just in time and backed off. I was like, what are you trying to do? You trying to kill me? Break my back? What? I didn't like the job very well. During the winter in Michigan, it's cold. The doors stayed open, and when you get water dumped on you and that wind comes through, there's no way to stay warm. And they expect you to keep working for minimum wage as a temp worker. It was freezing. I hated it. I hated the job. That inhaling all of that junk all the time, it was just nasty. And it came around to hiring time. And I was supposed to be pulled in as full-time, get the Christmas bonus, get some benefits. I had been there longer, but yet there was a guy that knew the boss who had been there for a lot less. He always got the easy jobs. And it came time to hiring, and he handed out all the letters, and I'm really pumped about it. I'm going to get a pay raise and be able to take care of my family a little bit better. And I opened it up, still a temp worker. Found out the other guy who had been there less time, who kept getting all the easy jobs, who was given less responsibility, got the full-time position. And you get to the point, it's like, what is the point of working my tail end off, taking in all of this junk, breathing in all of this junk, for this? I'm trying to do what's right. Have you ever been there before in your job? Okay, so some of you have connected with this. Job has gotten to the point where he was trying to live a life loving God, being right with God. And he's gotten to the point, he says, what's the point if I'm going to have everything taken away from me? And I watch all these wicked people getting all this blessing. What's the point? You say, did Job actually promote his righteousness over God's? Well, there's a couple of passages here that I want to share with you. Job 16, 12 through 17. Yes, we've gone over it before, but here it is. I was at ease, but he hath broken me asunder. What is he talking about? God. He hath also taken me by my neck and shaken me to pieces and set me up for his mark. It's like your dog with his chew toy, okay? That's what he feels like. His archers compass me round about. He cleaveth my reins asunder and doth not spare. He poureth out my gall upon the ground. He breaketh me with breach upon breach. He runneth upon me like a giant. I have sewed sackcloth upon my skin and defiled my horn in the dust. His pride is gone. My face is foul with weeping, and on my eyelids is the shadow of death. Not for any injustice in mine hands also my prayer is pure. This is Job. This is his reflection on what is going on. I did not deserve this. What is the problem? This isn't fair. You go on into Job 21, verses 13 through 15. They spend their days in wealth, and in a moment go down to the grave. What is it? The wicked. I mean, they enjoy it, and then all of a sudden they're dead, they're gone. No problems. Therefore they say unto God, depart from us, for we desire not the knowledge of thy ways. What is the Almighty that we should serve him, and what profit should we have if we pray unto him? You say, what is it? The wicked, they've come to a point where it's like they stand in the face of God, and we watch it happen. They mock God, and it seems like nothing's happening. At least not in my timing. God just wiped them off of the face of the earth. Wouldn't that make life just a little bit more easier? I mean, right? Just take them out of existence. Yet it seems like they're just profiting and profiting and profiting. What's the point? Elihu's bringing him back to this point of where Job was at, and he's elevated, and if you see it in the correct manner, he has elevated his righteousness as in, I am doing what's right, and God seems to be unjust in this moment because he's attacking me. The bad guys are getting the good stuff, and the good guys are getting the bad stuff. I'm sure of my righteousness. I'm not so sure about God's. This is where he's at. He's afraid that his crisis has changed God. Does our crisis change God? Does our circumstances somehow manipulate his character? We know that not to be true. But yet, don't you feel it sometimes? Doesn't it feel that way? That's where he's at. So he says, what's the point? What's the point of following after God? Point number 2 is you go back into verse 4. It says, I'm going to answer you. I will answer thee, and thy companions with thee. Okay? And this point, I've titled it, We Cannot Manipulate God. We cannot manipulate God. They say, well, where's that coming from? Well, as you read through this passage, you'll see here in verse 4 and going into verse 5, look into the heavens and see, behold the clouds which are higher than thou. If thou sinnest, what doest thou against him? Against who? God. Or if thy transgressions be multiplied, what doest thou unto him? If thou be righteous, what givest thou him? Or what receiveth he of thine hand? Thy wickedness may hurt a man as thou art, and thy righteousness may profit the Son of Man. He is differentiating the difference between, here it is, God and man. If you can do something right, okay? If you are doing what is good, you're going to profit someone else. If I brought in, maybe I can't use this one. Okay, not for pastor, but for the teens. Let's say I brought in Krispy Kremes. So I can't bring it into pastor. He doesn't like sugar. If I brought in Krispy Kremes for the teens, do you think that they would be happy with me in that moment? They would feel, oh, this is grace, right? I don't deserve it at all. The teens do not deserve it at all. And yet you bring in a couple dozen Krispy Kremes. I mean, they get pretty pumped about that. When you do something nice for someone, it makes you feel good, doesn't it? Has anybody ever paid it forward to you? Have you been sitting in the restaurant and all of a sudden they come up to you and say, hey, they paid for your meal? It makes you feel good inside, doesn't it? It makes you want to go and do it for someone else. Now, if somebody breaks into your vehicle in the middle of the night and takes stuff out of your vehicle, does it make you feel all good inside? Oh, it just makes you all happy? No. All of a sudden, there's an element of fear, insecurity. Am I really safe? What's going to happen next? What's going to elevate to? And he's saying there, Elihu is stating, he says that, listen, when you do right, it affects people. When you do wrong, it affects people. Sometimes you can add to them, sometimes you can take away from them. But when it comes to God, it doesn't matter how much you sin, you can never take away from God. I think it's interesting in how you will watch movies and how they will try to talk about the Greek gods, maybe Zeus or all the other ones. I mean, I can't remember all of them, but anyway, let's just take Zeus for instance. Where does he gain his power from, supposedly? By the way, he's not real. If you didn't know that, but Zeus is not real. But in the movies or in the books, what do they say? They gain their power from the prayers that are made from the people that worship them. And the less praying that goes towards them, the less power that they have over the people. And so therefore, they become lesser and lesser of God. Pastor relayed to us this morning, which I believe is very, very true, and the fact that Bible reading and prayer are becoming less and less popular throughout America today. Let's skip it. Let's get the 5-minute devotional and get it done and over with, right? The Bible literacy is almost null and void in compared to what it was when we had less Bibles, okay? But when people stop praying to the God who is called Jehovah, Does that take away his power? Because what does Jehovah mean? What is the I am whenever Moses asked, who should I tell them sent me? What did he say? Tell them, I am sent you. The self-existent one. The one who needs no one. The one who is so far above us, so powerful, so mighty, so magnificent. The self-existent one needs none of us. He made us. And so when you come down to it, okay, if we sin, we don't somehow degrade him in his power and who he is and in his character. We don't take away from that. If we do what's right, it doesn't mean that we add to him, and so therefore he owes us something. Well, if I go to church every Sunday, then God owes me something, correct? If I sing in the choir, God owes me something. If I work in Tiny Tots, and believe me, that's a tough job if you've got Ken in there, all right? God owes me something. If I have to keep track of the camera, and especially when Pastor Taylor is walking everywhere because he looks like a nervous chicken running around here, and they're trying to keep track of me, God owes me for my service to him. I'm sorry, by the way. God doesn't owe us anything. In fact, I have several passages that I want to read for you. And you'll see them on the screen, Lord willing. Isaiah 46, 9 and 10. It says, remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there's none else. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. You go into Acts 17, 24 through 25. It says, God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands, neither is worshipped with men's hands as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things. Are you getting where I'm going here yet? I've got a few more. Romans 11, 33 through 36. It says, oh, the depth of the riches, both of the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable are his judgments, and his ways past finding out. For who hath known the mind of the Lord, or who hath been his counselor, or who hath first given to him, and it shall be recompensed unto him again? For of him, and through him, and to him are all things, to whom be glory forever. Amen. Does that make you want to worship him yet? You go into Daniel chapter 4 and verse 34 through 35. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes into heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me, and I blessed the Most High. And I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. And all the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? None can question him. None can stand up to him. Tuesday. What happens if somebody gets in there that I didn't vote for? God made it happen. What if I don't think that they're right? But that wasn't my plan. God made it happen. What does it talk about in Romans chapter 1? That he gives them over to themselves and their own desires. What if America becomes a nation that's not under God? Well, guess what? Whether they take it off the dollar bill or not, we're still under God. Amen. He's still in control. They can lift up their face, just as Job stated in that passage, where they're in mockery of him, and yet he is still in control. He is the self-existent one. Now, on Tuesday, or let's say that it takes until January 1st in order to figure out this election. And let's say someone else who's not even on the ballot becomes, the next person. Let's say it goes into February, and someone else that's not even on the ballot has to take the spot because it's still messed up. Our government is in total turmoil, right? Is that going to make you fret? Ooh, that's tempting, isn't it? Is that going to make us flip a lid? I feel like it. And yet God is still in control. It's not going to affect whether you do what's right or you do what's wrong. It's not going to somehow make you deserving of blessing. It's not going to help you manipulate God. Your conduct does not change God, which is positive in this one thing. Did you know that no matter how bad somebody gets, God still loves that person? No matter how dirty you may feel about yourself, God still loves you and offers salvation, offers reconciliation, but there is a time frame. He's going to come back. There will be judgment day. So it's time to get things right. But not because you somehow want to deserve something from God and manipulate God to do whatever you want him to do, and make sure that every prayer that you pray is somehow answered in the way that you deemed it to be. You do it because you love God. That's why we want to be right with him. But as you go into that last point here, you have a prayer that's made in vain. In verse 9 through 16, it goes on, by reason of the multitude of oppressions, they make it the oppressed to cry out. They cry out by reason of the arm of the Almighty. So someone else is oppressing those who don't have the strength to be able to fight against this oppression. And so they're crying out to God, but none saith, where is God my maker, who giveth songs in the night, who teacheth us more than the beasts of the earth, and maketh us wiser than the fowls of heaven. There they cry, but none giveth answer, because of the pride of evil men. You say, where's this going? Why do you cry out? So that God will make your life better? Are you craving comfort rather than the comforter? Isn't that what we were talking about last week? He's actually saying that those who want and think that they, and this is where Job's at, he's elevated his righteousness over God's and his justice. And saying, you may be crying and praying to God. You may be crying out in this oppression. But just because you're crying out doesn't mean it's out of faith or sincerity. It could be because of pride. Entitlement. It could be because of this. He goes on and says, surely God will not hear vanity, neither will the Almighty regard it. Although thou sayest thou shalt not see him, yet judgment is before him. You might not see him. You might not want to see him. But he's still judge. Therefore, trust thou in him. But now, because it is not so, he hath visited in his anger, yet he knoweth it not in great extremity. Therefore doth Job open his mouth in vain. He multiplieth words without knowledge. You say, that's a little bold. And just like I said last week, what he's trying to state here, and he might not have it all perfect, because no one who comes before, when I try to relay this message to you, do I have every single word that comes out of my mouth perfect? I guarantee not, okay? But in this sense of laying it out there, he's saying that you are trying to speak and act without full knowledge of who God is. Remember who God is. And so many times we cry out for a reason for our infirmity. So many times we cry out, I just want to know why. You know, we're never guaranteed the why, but we are assured there is a reason. His why was interesting. The reason for Job's crisis was a response to his uprightness. How ironic. At least that's the way that we would think it. If that was stated to him, that this was because he was right with God, would he understand that? Highly doubt it. And maybe it was made more understandable by God sending Elihu in the midst of this, saying, listen, your crisis, your conduct, your cries out to God doesn't change who God is. It doesn't mean that you deserve anything because of all that you've done. Maybe you just need to back up and see how good our God is. How far beyond our reasoning he is. This isn't up on the PowerPoint, but I want to go to Isaiah. This was actually in the funeral the other day. Isaiah chapter 26 and verse 3 and 4. These verses that I'm going to give you were marked in double stars in Donna's Bible. It says there in verse 3, thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Trust ye in the Lord forever, for in the Lord Jehovah is everlasting strength. He's calling us in that moment. He's stating a truth that's a two-way street, okay? God will keep him or her in perfect peace. What's going on in the mind may not be in the circumstances that are going on, but it's a moment that the individual can rest in their mind because of God's faithfulness in keeping, guarding, watching over this individual. But then in this two-way street, there is a responsibility of the individual to stay their mind on God, to keep focus. on who he is and what doesn't change. It's God and his character. It doesn't change on how good I am or on how bad I am. He remains the same. It doesn't matter what goes on in our election, what goes on in the streets of Portland or Chicago, or what happens in Springfield. I can rest in God, who is faithful to keep me in perfect peace. But I have that responsibility. That truth needs to be applied personally. Trust ye. This is a truth. Now do it. Make it happen in your life. Trust ye continually. Forever. For eternity. Act like his kingdom that's in heaven is actually on earth what's going on. Like whatever his will be done, it's here. Because I'm resting in him. Trust in him and that he is in control. There's one last verse in Isaiah 41:10. I just found these to be very comforting in the midst of such a crazy time. It says there, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee, yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness." Has anybody memorized that verse before? If you haven't, do it. This is what you don't want to do. Don't fear. Don't be dismayed. What is dismay? It's being shocked and stressed at the shock. When things don't go my way, this messes up my whole entire schedule. Are you kidding me? Has anybody been like that in the last week? I mean, that was kind of like my whole last week. Okay? I was not planning on going to Michigan. That's in 3 more weeks. Okay? And yet God put that there, and I think I needed it. I really do. I think I needed it just to go, and there's a lady there. She comes up to me and she says, "I have a bone to pick with you." It's usually not good. You come and talk to me before you leave. Okay. So I sheepishly go into the kitchen where she's working. Is now a good time? She says, "I was mad at you. I was so angry with you for leaving me because you promised you would never leave." Well, I didn't think I was going to. You promised. You know, God helped me to understand that he had a purpose for that. And he's working. She says, "I forgive you." I said, if that's the way it's going to work from here on out, for somebody coming up to me and saying, "I have a bone to pick with you," I'll take it. God took me to Michigan to let somebody know that they forgave me. Gave me peace. She's okay. She can keep moving forward. She can now stop with what was in the past. Stop getting held up by what should have been according to her plan. And say, "It's okay. God's got this. I can keep moving on forward." That's what I needed. And in that moment, when it's saying here, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee," continually. You don't have to fear. You don't have to be shocked. You don't have to be stressed out. You don't have to run around like a chicken with his head cut off. I mean, you can rest and know that he is with us at all times. I will strengthen. He says, I'm always there. I'll give you strength. I will assist you when you need it. I will lift you up when you can't walk. And it's all going to be done the right way. I will uphold you with the right hand of my righteousness. Nothing that God does with me and his will for my life is ever wrong. I can rest. I could say, okay, God, you've got this. I don't got it, but you got this. Do you know the key is? Understanding that phrase, for I am thy God. Has that been made personal for you yet? Maybe you just need to revisit that. Maybe you just need to refocus and keep your mind stayed on him. Let's pray.